A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It is human nature to feel great when things are going well in life. When we have secure jobs, good health, and gain respect and position in society. Then things turn for the worse. When we may have to take salary cuts or face unemployment. When our health deteriorates and various diseases hamper our movement, and when our dirty secrets are made public, and when we are shunned from the very society which held us in reverence. It is precisely in such times do we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most. And in those moments, we may strike a deal with Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks of such people in the Quran. Then they pray to Allah with sincere devotion, saying, "If you deliver us from this, we shall become your thankful devotees." In such situations, it must be noted that striking such deals with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a very serious matter indeed. It is tantamount to a contractual obligation, which, if not fulfilled, may result in grave consequences for us and or our loved ones. Such was the position of the Pharaoh and his people, who continuously asked Musa alayhi salam to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take them out of their dire circumstances every time they rebelled and went back on their promise to worship the one true God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the end, after giving them several chances to repent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally obliterated them and rescued Musa alayhi salam and the Bani Israelis from their oppression. If only we would take heed from this important chapter of history. When we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in our trying times, we must come to Him with Tabattul and display Ikhlas. If we are truly sincere in our asking, then we will ensure that we do keep our promise and fulfill the obligation to pay back in return for the favors asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A slightly different situation is when we make a mannat, a pledge or a vow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is essentially to make it obligatory for us to do something or to promise to refrain from a specific activity. Here, the actual trial or calamity has not taken over us, but instead, we desire the outcome of something that we want very desperately, for which we make such a pledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, a couple that desperately wants to have a child but failed upon several attempts. They may make a mannat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which then must be honored on the outcome of being blessed with a child. Again, fulfillment of such a pledge is wajib, obligatory, and must be taken seriously as well. In order to fulfill it, we must again practice Tabattul and be sincere in our intent to help us actualize it. Therefore, the true meaning of Tabattul is to have inner Ikhlas. This means that we cannot devote ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and put Ikhlas on the side. Ikhlas is the key ingredient to bring true devotion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fruition. This is highlighted by Allah in the Quran when He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "There are some people who worship Allah standing on the verge of faith and disbelief. When such a person is blessed with good fortune, he is content. But if he encounters a trial, he turns back headlong, thus losing both his world and the hereafter. which is a clear-cut loss. Ayat number 8 of Surah Muzzammil also enjoins the devotional activity zikr, which is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be performed at any time of day or night. In the times of the earlier revelations of the Quran, zikr was practiced with the tongue. Later on, this practice was taken in its widest possible sense to include remembrance by heart as well, as to keep one's body constantly engaged in complying with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Al-Araf, Ayat 205, confirms this practice, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, "Bring your Rabb to remembrance deep in your soul with humility and in reverence, without raising your voice." Such humility can only be established with Ikhlas. When we may reach this stage, the heart will be busy in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how true guidance is achieved. This Ramzan, let us tap into our inner Ikhlas. Let us recall all those times when things were going great in our lives, but with trials, our tawakkul comes to a staggering halt. Let us truly worship Allah with Ikhlas to help us navigate through all the trials that are yet to come our way. Let us make this sincere pledge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now. If you have liked this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and do share it with your loved ones. The link is in the feed below. Wishing you all a very blessed Ramzan, and may the light of Al-Muzzammil shine upon you and your loved ones, bringing barakah and peace. Ameen.